Hi guys, Osmo here, and today I have for you a guide for one of the most powerful builds of this league that went a little bit under the radar, and that is the Phantasmal Cremation Phantasmal Unearth build. This build is not as popular as you would expect given the insane power of it, and there are two reasons for this. One of them is quite a high barrier of entry in terms of the cost, because just the basic gems that you need to make this build work are very expensive. And then secondly, it's a very complicated convoluted mechanic that is not intuitive. You cannot really see your DPS accurately in the POE, or at least without like doing some config magic. So it's really hard to estimate how this build would work, and therefore it's not very attractive to people. But it is insanely powerful, especially when it comes to doing simulacrums, which it blasts through simulacrums like it's nothing. I was doing simulacrum at wave 20. I decided to just like see if I can AFK tank everything, and it was no problem. I could just sit in the middle of the monsters and it was impossible for my character to die at wave 20 simulacrums. It clears wave 30 deathless very easily, no matter what the mods are pretty much. It's really good for bossing as well. I did all of the bosses, all of the uber bosses, like Maven Witnessed, Uber Elder, all of the craziest bosses you can imagine, all of the challenges. I did 38 out of 40 challenges except for the grind ones because I couldn't bother with them anymore, but 38 out of 40, all the bosses I did on this character. That basically is the reason why I made this character, and I had really good time with this. Plus visually it looks stunning. There's this great MTX for the cremation that makes it look really cool and works very well with this gray of the Phantasmal Unearth. So the character is very nice to look at, very nice to play, and it doesn't have a great clear speed, but for bossing or for simulacrum it is one of the most powerful builds I have played at all. So let's go over maybe the basic overview of how the build works, and then I'm gonna go over the skill gems, talk about the skills and how they interact. And then I'm gonna go over the items, and then I'll go over all the passives, cluster jewels, and everything else that needs to be said. So the basic idea for this build is that if you get Phantasmal Cremation, Phantasmal Cremation has a quality modifier that gives you a chance to explode a nearby corpse when firing projectiles. This basically counts all the projectiles that the cremation is firing, so that would be 6 projectiles with the awakened GMP, and then also you can have 3 cremations down, so 18 projectiles at a time, which means 18 corpses at a time can be just being exploded around this. There is a lot of corpse explosions that are being scaled from the health of the corpses, which we are basically supplying through the Phantasmal Unearth. So the Phantasmal Unearth, basically without linking it to GMP, it shoots a projectile, and that projectile has a corpse at the end of it. So basically we're shooting 6 at a time. So as the Phantasmal Unearth, so we have corpses, we pop 1, 2, 3 cremations, and then we start shoving this. So let me like move a little bit further, or let me like spawn this here so you can see my character spamming. You can see me spamming the corpses into this, and these corpses are just being exploded non-stop, and you can see how my cast speed is getting ridiculously crazy. If I click in here, we have like 200% increased cast speed because of our Ascendancy. This is an absolutely crazy amount of corpses being exploded at the same time, and it does ridiculous amounts of damage. But you need to set that up. You can see, like, for example, Phantasmal Unearth here, I have level 34, which is the highest you can get that I'm aware of. I don't know how you could possibly get higher level of Phantasmal Unearth, and that is with that spawns corpses that have a level 92, and the Phantasmal Unearth also gives you the quality that corpses spawned have increased maximum life, and also as of course Necromancer, we have tons of increased maximum life of the corpses that we spawn from many different modifiers. So we basically are spawning like insanely high HP corpses that have higher HP than any specters could possibly be, or any mobs could possibly be, and we're doing ridiculous amounts of damage with that. So let's talk first about the cremation, right? So the cremation setup looks like this. I have it in the helmet because I'm playing the crit version. Normally you could have it in the chest and have a 6 link, but we have a little bit of a better setup, which allows our corpse explosions to actually crit, and we can even cap that crit chance to be 100% with the use of brittle ground from the boots. So we're able to crit, and this is, as far as I know, the only way you can get the corpse explosion to crit, because you cannot get spell crit or anything like that. If you pick up these modifiers for spell crit, like increased critical strike chance for spells, all of that will not apply to the corpse explosion, but for some reason this explodes, because this ability is like affected by this modifier. Like socketed spells have plus 3% to critical strike chance. It applies also to this corpse explosion, because this corpse explosion effect is in this helmet, so it somehow applies to it as well. So that's one way of doing that. So we are making sure that our cremation and the explosion that's coming from the quality modifier is going to be critting. The Phantasmal Cremation, we have 23 quality on it, and then we have also a 30 quality coming from Ashes of the Stars, which is necessary for this build as well to function, and that is giving me 100% chance to explode a nearby corpse. It says 106 because I have a 21-23 Phantasmal Cremation, but it's basically 100% chance to explode a nearby corpse whenever it's firing a projectile. Then we have it linked with GMP for basically more projectiles. Then we have it linked with Awakened Fire Penetration, which also allows me to apply fire exposure on it. And then we also have Awakened Increased AoE, just to have as big of a coverage as we can, because it's a stationary skill. So we really wanted to cover a lot of ground, because I cannot just freely move it. I mean, I can move it, but it takes a couple casts, and it's better if it covers a bigger area. So I want to run increased area of effect, especially considering that for the damage, one of the links in the helmet is actually concentrated effect, right? So the helmet I crafted myself. The process by which you can craft this helmet is by basically getting the suffixes first and then going for the prefixes. So what you want first is like a hubris circlet, item level 86, I think 85 might be even fine as well, with the unearth spawns corpses with +5 to the level, which, you know, increases the level even further, giving us even more HP. That is by far the best enchant you can get. So you get like a hubris circlet like that. Then you make sure to make it Shaper and Elder. The way you do that is you just slap it with a random exalted orb from like a Crusader or something, and then you harvest, swap the influence until you hit Shaper, Awakener orb, slam the Elder on it, or the other way around, whichever one you get on it. And then what you do is basically either spam the essence or spam fossils. So you can spam the fossils that give you the essence rolls. Not sure which one is it. It's like not gilded. One of these actually gives like an essence mod, but it's also very easy to just spam the essences of horror, which give you the socketed gems deal 30% more elemental damage. And then what you're looking for is the hypothermia, right? Once you get the hypothermia, and ideally level 20 hypothermia, then what you want to do is fill in your do like suffixes cannot be changed, right? On the prefix, you do suffixes cannot be changed, and you have to make sure that you have an empty suffix. And because you have suffixes cannot be changed, the ones that you have cannot be changed, but if it's an empty one, you can get one extra. And when you reroll crit from the harvest, you do reforge crit with the suffixes cannot be changed, you are going to be guaranteed either +2 critical strike chance for spells or attacks. And if you don't hit it, you can try to use, for example, where is this orb? You can try to use the not Orb of Dominance, Orb of Conflict. Yeah, Orb of Dominance. The Maven one. You can try to use this in order to try to sacrifice one of the mods. Like if you hit, for example, the critical strike chance to attacks, you can eat that one and bump your hypothermia up. That's a possible outcome, so you can try that. If not, you just redo it with the essences once you break the hypothermia, and you just keep going until you get +3 to critical strike chance for spells, which is the T1. And at that point you have the suffixes done, you lock the suffixes again, and you just reforge, or you just do reforge suffixes from the harvest. So like reforge, keep suffixes, right? So it's gonna reforge your prefixes until you get conk effect. This can take, I don't know, this can take like 20 tries, it can take 30 tries. It really, it's a pretty costly process, and it's a very annoying process because you have to trust other people with your items. So try to look for people who maybe sell these in bulk, or try to farm them yourself. I farmed myself like 10, and then I bought from someone like 4, and I hit it. So I hit it with like 13 tries or something like that. So once you get the conch effect, then it doesn't really matter. The level doesn't do that much of a difference, whether it's 16, 18, or 20. It's like 1 or 2% difference in terms of the damage, so it's not that big of a deal. As long as you get the conch effect, it's gonna be pretty good. And then you can just craft energy shield, slam it with an exalt if you want, and that's basically it. That's the helmet. So this is basically like a 7.5 link or something like that, Phantasmal Cremation setup. So that's the first gem setup. It's already like very, very complicated, but I also explained the item in it. Then the other important part of the build is the gloves. So in the gloves we have the Phantasmal Unearth, which the only thing we care about is like how many corpses and what is their level. So the level of the gem is very, very important. That's why we need level 21, 20% quality Phantasmal Unearth. Then we are linking it to Awakened Enhanced level 5. So we have, of course, if you don't have the Awakened Enhanced level 5, you just do normal Enhance. But we have the Awakened Enhanced level 5, which also gains +1 to levels. So this gem gives 40 quality, and the 40 quality give me like 80% increased maximum life of the corpses, which is massive boost to damage. Then we have Awakened Empower level 5 in this, which is getting boosted to level 6. So this is giving me +5 to the levels of the Unearth. Then we've got Awakened GMP for the more projectiles. And then we're getting the extra levels. One we're getting from Ashes of the Stars, and then we're getting a couple of levels from the Opal Scepter, which has +1 to level of all spell skills and +1 to the level of all physical spell skill gems. So that's why we got the level 34 Phantasmal Unearth. This item also has, as you can see, a lot of modifiers that increase the level. And the Phantasmal Unearth has a projectile and AoE tag, so you can do the Ashling +2 to level of socketed projectile gems, and also +2 to level of socketed AoE gems, as well as the socketed dex and strength gems. The way you make this, short of mirroring it, like I actually bought this mirrored. I haven't mirrored from someone, but I actually bought mirrored one because it was cheaper, because someone was selling that, and it saved me the crafting. I did not craft this myself, clearly, but I wanted to try to craft it, and the way to do it is to do it with the combinators, right? The recombinators are the way to craft this. Basically what you do is you make sure to get the base first, right? So you get like sorcerer gloves without any influences or anything, and then you basically spam on them fossils that give you the extra attributes. If you do it on like very low level gloves, like level 2 gloves, you're gonna be much more likely to hit the attributes, and you want to hit dexterity and strength. This is also combined with a temple mod that gives you cold res, which we don't need the cold res, but it's mainly for the 50% increased damage with hits against chilled enemies, which basically all the enemies next to our corpses are going to be always chilled with like a 20% chill, or 30% chill actually. So we have this temple mod on this as well, but it's not necessary. If you're not going for the temple mod, what you want is just spam fossils until you get like the dex and the strength, and then whatever third suffix that you want. Actually, if it doesn't have a third suffix, that's probably even better. And then what you do is like I think you lock suffixes, and then you go do like Ashling, T4 Ashling, or lock suffixes and like Veiled Chaos Orb, just so that you can get the +2 to level of socketed AoE gems. And you can lock with the craft if you wanted to like block something. That would be the conversion, right? You would block the conversion like socketed, like 25% damage converted, physical damage converted to cold, lightning, or fire. You craft that before you unveil, and then you unveil either the +2 to level of socketed AoE or +2 to level of socketed projectile gems. It has to come from the unveil, because from the craft you're gonna get only +1 to the level. And once you have the strength, dex, and +2, you make sure that you have another prefix on there, so you have like 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes. I think that gives you the biggest chances, but you can double check that looking at like the recombinator guide. And then you combine them with other gloves that also have the +dex, +strength, and then they have the other Ashling crafts, either projectile or AoE, and you combine them, and then you hope you get it, right? It should be like decent. It should be like decent chance to get it, but you might have to do it multiple times. And it's pretty annoying because then in order to get the bases, you have to go through like more crafting. So it's a very annoying craft because you have to keep combining it, and it's a little bit RNG involved. And especially if you want something like the temple mod in there as well, that's going to take way more currency, but that's going to give you the most damage. Then we have the prefixes, sorry, the implicits from the Eldritch influences, which are exposure, which actually don't need the exposure because we have the Awakened Fire penetration, but this is giving me the exposure faster because this is only a 10% chance on hit, so it's gonna take a moment until you get it, so you have a little bit more chance. Basically, the first hit you do already applies the exposure, and then we have the +2 to maximum cold resistance because we are playing a build that uses melding of the flesh, so we're getting 90 to all resistances, and that +2 is required. So that's basically the gloves. In terms of the enchant, there are 2 enchants that are really good on gloves that a lot of people are not using, and they're kind of sleeping on them, but these enchants make you much more tanky. So Commandment of Light when you take a critical strike is very nice. It basically heals you a little bit when you take a crit. And then there is another one that is the one that spawns a copy of you when you get hit as well, that basically distracts enemies and enemies shoot at it, and basically it protects you in that way. So that's the setup for the Phantasmal Unearth. Then we've got our aura setup in the chest. We're using Skin of the Lords. Skin of the Lords gives me tons of armor and energy shield, and I'm scaling both of those because I'm using Aegis Aurora. It gives me +2 to levels of all the gems in here, which includes the Awakened Enlighten. So we have Awakened Enlighten level 7 actually. And we have Purity of Elements here, so we are Elemental Ailment immune. This helps us get tons of resistances. Then we have Determination, which is getting actually, what is plus? This is last level 26 Determination, so tons of armor. We got Divergent Tempest Shield, that is tons of spell block, because we have actually, once we get our offering up, we got 75 block, so this is true block. No glancing blows, 75 spell block, 75 attack block. So Divergent Tempest Shield helps us get that. Then we got Purity of Ice, which is required to get our max resistances to 90. And then we've got Discipline, which gives me just a bunch of energy shield. So that's basically the aura setup. Then we have the setup and the weapon. Oh, also one other thing, there on the Skin of the Lords, I might as well just cover the items as I go through it as well. The Skin of the Lords has the Unwavering Stance. But if I manage to get enough stun avoidance on the jewels, so I have some jewels, where are they? Like for example this one, this Watcher's Eye, I got on it 15% chance to avoid being stunned. If I got on all my cluster jewels chance to avoid being stunned, then I would be able to, instead of Unwavering Stance, run something better, like for example, what I have in here, Leafy Shade, right? Leafy Shade would be also amazing because it would reduce the damage over time I take, so that's a really cool swap that I could do once I got enough stun avoidance, right? So then we have weapon. In the weapon we have Divergent Purifying Flame, which basically applies Consecrated Ground that makes the enemies on top of it take increased damage. Then we've got Anomalous Assassin's Mark for the crit chance and crit multi. And then we've got Divergent Bone Offering, so we got 41% chance to block attack damage and spell damage for the minions, and we get like half of that, so that's like 20%. So this is huge amount of block and spell block. It's very nice. And then also like a 2% regen per second if we blocked recently, so it adds a lot of survivability. The weapon itself is very simple, it's just a +2 with fire damage, trigger, and double damage craft on it. Chance to ignite doesn't really matter. The enchant is just increased elemental damage, very simple, like a +2 fire scepter. Then we have cast when damage taken setup. So with cast when damage taken, I have this molten shell in here. This is level 13 by default, but this is being increased from like global modifiers, and I'm basically, wait, does that actually make it not work? Level 48. No, this should still trigger. This should still trigger because it says requires level 48. So we got cast when damage taken Molten Shell plus Val Molten Shell, and with like 100k armor, this is giving me a massive amount of massive amount of mitigation, like extra effective HP. And then we've got Divergent Precision for the extra crit chance, because I can fit this. I have very low reservation. You can see I have only like it only reserves 100 extra mana, and this is like max level precision, which allows me to cap my crit easier. What else do we have? We have the boots setup. The boots have the Animate Guardian. Oh boy, Animate Guardian has tons of stuff here. So we got Anomalous Defiance banner here for extra armor, and then Divergent Animate Guardian because the quality gives me extra minion life, with Anomalous Minion Life with Meat Shield. The reason why I have Meat Shield is because I want him to stand near me so that I can get the effects. What we have on the Animate Guardian is the Kingmaker. The Kingmaker gives me critical strike multiplier, it gives me increased item rarity, it gives me also calling strike, it gives me 10 fortification, and it gives me the garb of the ephemeral. Your action speed cannot be modified below base value. That's basically what the Juggernaut has. So if I'm doing simulacrums and there are these white hands, this like pink icon, you know, the bubble, I can actually move freely through that, and it doesn't slow me below my base movement speed, which is very, very nice. And then he also has the boots. The boots that he is wearing are these, the Legacy of the Fury, that applies Scorch to the enemies, and basically enemies nearby have reduced fire res as well, so I do basically even more damage. Very, very good setup. And there's also the garb of the ephemeral, I think, also gives you immunity to crit. So basically you don't take any extra damage from critical strikes, which is a massive, massive boost to your survivability. I took this Animate Guardian to every single encounter in the game, and it haven't died. Like, I did wave 30 simulacrums, Uber Cyrus, Uber Elder with Maven, every single fight you can imagine. It doesn't die. Like, it's impossible for this guy to die. He's got the most ridiculous regen you can possibly imagine. Yeah, it's really OP. I'm gonna explain a little bit more about this when I talk about the passives as well. Then we have also Flame Dash for the mobility, and that's it when it comes to the gems. We have Aegis Aurora, of course, which gives me massive amount of energy shield recovery when I block, which is based on my armor, and that basically makes it so that I cannot die in something like a Simulacrum or a 100% Delirious map. It basically recovers my ES when I'm blocking, so that the more monsters are hitting me, actually the less likely I am to die, which is ridiculous. I get it with the 4% chance to block because I was missing like 1 or 2% chance to block attack damage, and I didn't want to go below 75. I wanted to have max blocks, so that's why I got this one. Of course, Ashes of the Stars with allocated charisma. And then we've got also Polaric Devastation. It's a very, very good ring. It gives you tons of resistances. The cold one we don't really need, but it gives me the cover enemies on Ash, global crit and elemental damage. It's a very, very good ring. It's both defensive and offensive option because the Ash slows the enemies as well. Then we've got Mage Blood. Very self-explanatory. We need the attributes actually very badly, so that's the priority of in terms of the rolls. You really want the dexterity to be as high as possible, same with the strength. And then we've got a ring, which I crafted myself as well. The ring has to be an unset ring. If you want to use a Flame Dash, you need some extra sockets. It's pretty hard to come by the sockets, and I crafted actually 2 of these. One of them I crafted with dexterity. One of them has a reduced effect of curses on you. The thing is, I also have other sources of the reduced effect of curses on me, so I don't really need that. But if I needed it, then I would be wearing it. The thing is, I also don't need the dex from this one. They're very similar. Basically, what you want on these is you want to get the flammability on hit, which is a Conqueror modifier, and then you want the energy shield. The Crusader modifier, which is percentage increased maximum energy shield, and then you want to Awakener's Orb them together. And what you're hoping for is also flat energy shield, maybe dexterity, maybe some resistances, and like an open prefix, so you can either craft energy shield or you can craft the minus mana cost. Minus mana cost is pretty useful because it allows you to have very cheap Unearth and Cremation, which means with that 200% increased cast speed, you can just keep spamming them. This ring basically has slightly higher energy shield than this one. That's why I'm using the one without dex. I have tons of dex coming from cluster jewels, like this one, for example, 8 to dex, this one 4 to all attributes, this one 5 to dex. So you can see all of these little cluster jewels I got give me a ton of dex, so I actually don't need that on the item. But if I needed to, I could use the other ring. And then, so the ring I crafted basically by just Awakener Orb slamming them together. And then the other thing that I crafted as well are the boots. The boots are pretty simple to craft. Basically what you want is T1 percentage energy shield, T1 flat energy shield, and 30% move speed. Ideally you would have like an onslaught on this, or like extra move speed instead of like move speed if you haven't taken a hit, but I happen to like unveil the cannot be chilled and didn't bother swapping it. I just needed the 30% move speed. So the way I crafted it is I basically got the base with the enchant already, because I didn't want to bother like enchanting my boots, and then I spammed dense fossils until I got T1 energy shield, and then an empty prefix, and then a couple of suffixes, and then I made sure to fill all of my suffixes, including the rolling, like prefixes cannot, no sorry, suffixes cannot be changed. So on the prefix I crafted suffixes cannot be changed. So basically what you want is the T1 energy shield flat, T1 energy shield percentage, and suffixes cannot be changed. And then you go do T for Ashling, and you have 1 in 3 chance of her hitting the suffixes cannot be changed metacraft. If she hits that metacraft, then you basically unveil with a very high chance of having the 30% increased movement speed, and that's it. That's your prefixes. And then you can lock the prefixes as well with prefixes cannot be changed, and do like Reforged Lightning. I needed the lightning res, so I was doing Reforged Lightning, and then you can do that until you have like a good lightning res, and then ideally like a strength or dex roll. I had like a regen roll, which is great, and I craft strength on it, and that's it. That's basically the boots. And then what you want is the influence. Searing Exarch drops brittle ground while moving. So this is, as you can see, let me just move a little bit. You can see I'm dropping brittle ground while moving. It's like this cold thing behind me. It lasts 6 seconds, and it basically makes sure that I get to 100% crit when the enemies are standing on top of it. And then we also have on the Eater of Worlds extra regen if I have endurance charges, and I am using Enduring Composure, so I'm gonna have endurance charges pretty much all the time. And that mod can be replaced with like chance to avoid bleeding if you really want, because we're immune to corrupted blood but not to actual bleeding, so you could have that mod as well if you wanted. And that basically concludes all of these items. For the flasks, for our mage blood, we are running a Quicksilver with a reduced effect of curses on me. We are running a Bismuth flask with a reduced mana cost of skills, because mana cost being really low is very important for this build, because we're spamming Unearth like maniacs. Then I have the Diamond flask with increased critical strike chance, and then I have Granite flask with increased armor. All of these have 70% increased effect from the, where is it, the Enkindling Orb, right? This one, yep, Enkindling Orb. So the 70% increased effect, and also 25% increased effect from the prefix. And then I'm also using Bottle Faith just to nuke a boss. You could also get Onslaught from running Cinder Solo Orn if you wanna just basically do some mapping. So that's it when it comes to the items. Now when it comes to the passives, which is the last thing. The passives, let's start with the Ascendancy, because that's the most important thing. Necromancer is basically ridiculously broken, like ridiculously broken. If I go to Blood Aqueducts or something, I can show you like one of the most insane things about this Ascendancy, right? So if we put a corpse next to an enemy, right? So put a corpse next to an enemy, and you can see 19% shock, and then we have, okay, this is, let's put another corpse. 19% shock, 15% chill, so the enemies are chilled and shocked. Basically, that's like 20% damage. If I had boots, like if I had more strength on, for example, my jewels, if I swapped like dexterity into strength, wore the other ring, and then instead of the strength here, I would craft like increased effect of ailments, it would be like 20 something shock. So that basically, that one line from here, you can see this corpse pact here, right? This one line in the middle, enemies near corpses you spawned recently are chilled and shocked. That one line there is basically Skitterbots for free. You basically get Skitterbots for free. and you can scale them as well. And it doesn't cost you any mana. It's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. And then on top of that, you get 200% increased cast speed, which you could see me demonstrate earlier. And then you get corpses you spawn have 50% increased maximum life. This is one of the most insane, ridiculously broken nodes in the entire game of all the Ascendancies. Necromancer is so fucking powerful. It's crazy. Like, this one node is like so crazy good. Then we've got the Plaguebringer. So if I consume the corpse recently, then I get 30% increased AoE, deal 10% more damage, and enemies nearby deal 10% less damage. So very, very powerful. Then we've got Essence Glutton. So we got tons of mana regen, which we really like. And then we got tons of energy shield regen, which we really like as well. So this is extremely powerful. And then we've got also Mistress of Sacrifice. So we got skill effect duration, tons of skill effect duration, which applies to, for example, Cremation as well. And on top of that, we're getting the half of our offerings, right? So we get the offerings affecting us. Extremely powerful Ascendancy. One of the main reasons why this build can even work is that this Ascendancy is fucking broken. It's so strong, and there's a reason why people are playing it in the Gauntlet over and over again, because it's just so fucking powerful, right? So a lot of people are like not understanding why Necromancer is so popular and so powerful, but like, for example, Corpse Pact being one of the most insanely like overtuned nodes in the game is one of the reasons. Okay, so how does the tree look like? We're pathing. I'm gonna basically go how we're pathing. So we're pathing out here. We're grabbing Grave Intentions. Why am I grabbing Grave Intentions if I don't have any minions? Well, I actually have this Animate Guardian, and this Animate Guardian needs to have energy shield. If he doesn't have energy shield, then it's not gonna he's not gonna survive. The Mask of the Stitch Demon requires that. Normally what people are doing are they're crafting like on the chest, like 10% of your max life as energy shield. They're giving that to the Animate Guardian, and he has energy shield, and he gets to like regen a fuck ton of it because it's based on like his max life, right? His regen, which is ridiculously crazy item, makes him basically unkillable. But if I'm using the Garb of the Ephemeral, I need some other way of giving him energy shield, and that is actually coming from the Grave Intentions, and it's giving him actually 20% of the max life as extra max energy shield, which is a huge amount, and also Chaos Res, so making him not be able to basically die to any type of damage. So it's ridiculous, right? Then we've got this super powerful cluster, and basically if you can play a build that can grab this node, the Undertaker node, if you can just somehow make it so that this node makes sense in your build, you're gonna be so fucking happy. 2% regen on one notable is massive. Like, you really have to struggle hard to look at like 1% regen, 1%. You have to like path multiple points to get like 1% regen. It's really hard to get that much regen. This is absolutely ridiculous amount of regeneration. Plus increased damage if you have consumed the corpse recently. Plus Desecrate and Unearth have maximum number of corpses allowed. Doesn't really matter, but like the regen is ridiculous, and it also gives me increased effect of my offerings from the mastery, which gives me more block and more regen. So corpses that we spawn have more life, very powerful. We're pathing up here for crit multi because we're actually critting. We're actually crit capped. We're grabbing the aura nodes, all of the aura nodes, because we are running a lot of auras. This whole chest is full of auras. We got more auras here and here. So this is really powerful for us. We're grabbing aura cluster here, and aura cluster here. All of these, basically, we're eating them up because they're very powerful, because we're running tons of different auras. Then we got CI, so we are immune to chaos damage. Very comfy. Actually, since this patch, I think CI is gonna be more popular now because people really can't be bothered dealing with chaos damage. Like, chaos resistance is kind of mandatory right now, so we're running CI. Then we've got these large cluster jewels. So I want a disorienting display, prismatic heart, and Sadist. Basically, I want prismatic heart for some resistances and increased damage, and then I want the Sadist for the increased damage, like tons of increased damage, because we are chilling, igniting, and shocking. So it's really powerful. And then we got it on a fire damage cluster, which is the best one that you can get. For the medium cluster jewels, we are running pressure points. So this is double damage from the crits, crit chance, and increased AoE crit multi. Very powerful. Same here, we got magnifier pressure points, magnifier pressure points, magnifier pressure points. So all of these are the same. And then this other large cluster jewel actually has also smoking remains, so create a smoke cloud on kill. Doesn't do anything for me, but it's 35% increased damage, which is better than the 30, and I don't need any more res. So this is that's why we're getting the smoking remains in here mainly. When it comes to the small cluster jewels, we have the enduring composure, which has also increased like maximum ES, strength and dex, which are all the things that we need. And then I've got nature's patience, and you might have noticed that I have vines on me willingly. In 2022 I am putting vines on my character. Why am I putting vines on my character? First of all, if I want to move, I just break them with a flame dash, so it doesn't matter. But a lot of the time this character is so tanky that you can sit in the middle of a simulacrum or a boss fight or whatever, and you can just spam your skills and just keep casting, and you don't have to move at all. You just don't have to move. You can tank anything, and you can just keep spamming and doing the damage. And in order to do that, it helps if you also are taking 10% less damage and have 20% chance to deal double damage, right? Because this is 2% chance per grasping vine. We have 10 grasping vines, so we got 20% chance to deal double damage. 1% less damage taken per vine, so that's 10% less damage taken. Insanely powerful for 2 passives that we're taking here to grab it, right? And also gives me corrupted blood immunity, because why not? It was actually very, very cheap. It was probably like 1x or something when I bought it. It was very cheap, maybe like up to 3x, but nobody uses this because nobody wants the vines on them. But for this build, it's actually very, very good tech. Then we've got a Watcher's Eye. On the Watcher's Eye, I got the block chance, that's all. Spell block, attack block, increased energy shield, avoid chance to avoid being stunned as well from the implicit, which I would like to get on all of the jewels that I have. And then we've got melding of the flesh, which basically makes it so that the cold resist that we're getting up through Purity of Ice and through the +2 to max cold res is giving us 90% to all resistances, right? 90% to all elemental resistances, and chaos we are immune to. Other jewels that we have are here. If you just had slots for jewels, just to pick rare jewels, you would basically grab something like this. So global crit multi with fire skills, crit multi with elemental skills, and maximum energy shield. So triple crit multi, max energy shield is what you would like in terms of the rare jewels. And then we have another jewel here, which is Forbidden Flesh. And then somewhere else I have a Forbidden Flame. Where's my, this is Forbidden Flame, yeah, Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame. We're grabbing the Malediction, which gives me a chance to get an extra curse, so I can have the Assassin's Mark and the flammability, and also Malediction, which means I take a further like 10% reduced damage and enemies take 10% increased damage. So we're getting a bunch of those effects, and it makes me even more tanky. Ridiculous combo. Then we've got a bunch of ES here, and here I actually picked the Dreamer, the 3 points. This is something that helps me basically make the build super comfy. I actually only need the Dreamer. Like if I had like a free anoint, if I didn't want to anoint Charisma, I could potentially just anoint this instead of Charisma. But Charisma does give me also the effect of auras, which is very, very powerful. So I would stick with the anointment of the Charisma and suck it up and grab these 3 points. I think the reduced mana cost of skills basically makes it so that I can have 2 mana cost on the Unearth and just keep spamming it no matter what, and it just adds a lot of comfort to the build. It's not necessary, but you will like cap out on damage in terms of like mana cost. Then we've got the Mastery for Leech. You could switch it for the Reflect Mastery as well and use the Reflect Pantheon, some elemental damage, some regen, mana regen, because regen and mana regen are very, very powerful for my character. Then we've got also the Block Mastery, Shield Block Mastery, 1% chance to block attack damage per 5% chance to block on equipped shield, and this shield has 36% chance to block. So this is giving me a lot of extra block. And then we've got just energy shield, and we've got the divine shield for extra recovery when we mitigate physical damage from our massive armor and what are they called, endurance charges as well, right? So that's basically it when it comes to the passives. I think I covered everything when it comes to that. So the build is very complicated because you can tell like how long it took me. This video is probably going to be very long. It took me a very long time to explain everything about the build, but I went over everything, I think every detail and why these things are in here. So if you want to make something similar or like backwards engineer, then you're going to be able to see why we're doing certain things and understand the build and why the build is powerful. The thing is, I think the build is probably not going to be nerfed next league, because it is so much like under the radar, unless like this video becomes super popular and everybody starts doing it at the end of the league with all their currency that they accumulated, but it's very unlikely. So I doubt it will be nerfed. So it's, if you just want to like spam simulacrums, this will be still an amazing build to do that, but it will be pretty expensive. It's expensive to get into. You basically need the ashes and the Phantasmal Cremation to even start thinking about the build. So it's a very, very expensive build. I have spent, I don't know how many, like a lot of currency on this. You can count this up. I don't even want to start counting this up. It's a very, very expensive build, but in terms of the damage, like you'll see the footage. I'll try to show as much footage as possible. There is going to be montage at the beginning, and you'll see like uber bosses and are being absolutely melted. This looks like anywhere, like once it ramps up, it's anywhere between like 40 to 100 million DPS. I don't know how much exactly, it's hard to calculate, but 40 something million DPS is something that you can get very easily with this level of gear when you're able to like pre-stack the cremation and then start pumping a little bit. You're able to dish out a ridiculous amount of damage and just like melt, like the first phase of Maven just completely demolished. So the thing that next league will be very difficult to do is this item, right? The gloves are going to be very difficult to make without the recombinators, if not impossible, right? Because you won't be able to combine the +2 to level of socketed gems for AoE and for projectiles. So the best you'll be able to do is to get level 33 Phantasmal Unearth, which lowers the level of corpses that you spawn to 92. So that means you won't even need the Empower of level 5, Awaken Empower, so you'll be able to just get away with just Empower level 4, which will make this significantly cheaper, and you'll just go with the level 90 corpses. It's still going to be doing a ridiculous amount of damage, so it's still going to be a very viable build next league, but some things in it might be nerfed, like for example, Melding of the Flesh might get nerfed, Aegis Aurora might get nerfed. It's a very powerful combo that everybody is using right now. So that is something that could get nerfed, but it still will be a very, very powerful build for things like simulacrums. Yeah, so it's mainly like the gloves not being possible to craft anymore in the future. Very, very expensive build, but this is something for the juicers. Next videos are going to be about a little bit more basic stuff. I'll try to make some more videos for beginners, but yeah, this video is definitely not something for beginners. If you're a beginner, you should not be playing this build. This is something for people with tons of currency, like someone who has like 1 or 2 mirrors to spend on a build. You don't necessarily need that much to get started, but you need like 100x to get started with this type of a setup. But that's it. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it helped you if you wanted to make this type of a build. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.